Today I'm going to show you 3 things about exposure that photographers are constantly getting wrong, and the third one is really a doozy. I'm Gavin Seim, and this is Mastering Photography. Number 1 is understanding the basics of doubles and halves. Doubles and halves is the stop. It's 2/50th of a second to 500th of a second, right? We've just gone down 1 stop. It's ISO 400 to ISO 800. We've just gone up 1 stop. It's f2.8 to f4. We've just gone down a stop. These doubles and halves allow us to move exposure wherever we want. And people get obsessed with whether their exposure is right or whether the camera says they're over or underexposing. And that doesn't matter because the camera doesn't know your exposure. You only know your exposure, and there is no right or wrong exposure. Double and halve it until you get it where you want it to be. Number 2 is in those doubles and halves, photographers are always obsessing with exposing to this medium level, this middle histogram, this HDRified, everything has to be the same relative level. It's like if you were making a movie and all the sound, music, dialogue, ambient noise, everything had to be at the same level. And so we obsess with this so much that we get paranoid about noise reduction and whether we're above ISO 64, we agonize about at what point does the sensor of my camera fall apart, when in fact the iconic photos of history are often filled with atmosphere and noise and even blurriness. And you can use these, going back to number 1, like shutter speed, to say, okay, do I need to turn up the noise? I can turn down my shutter speed and actually maybe get a little blur. Maybe that's good. So number 2 is that we obsess over this perfect median exposure that doesn't exist. And because of that, we obsess over noise and pixel peeping, even though I'm guilty of pixel peeping sometimes. And in today's AI fake world, having feeling in our photos, that's everything. Okay, number 3, and this one is huge. Almost all photographers, including myself, are guilty of all the time. That is thinking that it's about exposure, not about shadow. I didn't say not about light. Exposure is the technical method. We turn up and down. It's the volume knob. But what actually makes our photos great is the shadow. Look at your best photos. Look at the coffee table books in your living room. Look at the iconic photographers. They always understood to use shadow. We're always doing this thing, like I said in number 2, where we want this median exposure, or in number 1, where we're agonizing about what is the correct exposure? What does the camera say? That's not what we need to do as photographers. We need to see light. Yes, we need to understand light. We need to understand exposure, but we need to use shadow. It's the shadow in our photos that actually makes them come alive, that gives us 3D pop, that gives us all of these things that make photos win awards, that make photos have feeling, that make photos have drama. Shadow means expose down if you have to. Shadow means don't believe a meter that says it's at 0 and therefore it's the correct exposure. Shadow means think like a cinema photographer, like a director on a $300 million movie. They're always exposing down, so just little bits are illuminated. The best photographers are always doing this. They're using shadow. This is something I talk about at length in my Shadow Hackers workshops. I'll put a link below if you want to check that out because it changes everything. So number 3, expose for shadow. Not for perfect exposure, not for the 0 point on your meter, not for a good histogram. Expose for shadow, which creates drama, which creates contrast, which creates a beautiful photograph. Those are the 3 things I see photographers getting wrong most of all, and we keep falling into those ruts because we're not practicing shadow hacking enough. And that's what we do on this channel. We'll see you on the next one.